I'm very pleased to welcome once again Alan McCullough, who has, the name Park-McCullough House. You can figure that out. And Alan is one of the actors and spearheads and I guess chief cook and bottle washers at the Living Room Theater, right?
Randall and I both are, all of those things.
And also Randall and Zinn, who I guess you directed the latest show, right? That was done, Men of Tortuga. You were the director?
Yes, I've directed all the shows.
Yeah. And also joining us is the producer of the Living Room Theater. His name is Roger Cooper from Arlington. Roger, welcome.
Thank you.
And you've been on my show in the past too with your fabulous gardens over in
Yes,
Arlington. So the Living Room Theater, it's what, in its fourth or fifth year now?
Fifth year.
Fifth year. And this is a program, and Men of Tortuga was quite a production, quite well done. And why don't we watch a couple of minutes of that, right?
Okay.
Great.
We have a man in a room,
Yes.
a high office in a tall building. We have one spot from which
A nest.
a person could shoot. We measured the distance exactly 107
57
yards and something. We have it exactly, but it's written elsewhere
Sure.
for obvious reasons, I think.
Sure. This is through glass, this shot?
Yes, not bulletproof.
No, but thick glass. This is an office building, a skyscraper?
Yes.
Okay, the distance was difficult, very difficult, but I assume we're talking about the very best equipment.
Oh, yes, anything.
Equipment is not a problem.
No, but a pane of glass, even a regular pane of glass, will affect the trajectory of the bullet. This is going to be a skyscraper window, which is like half-inch minimum thickness of reinforced glass with a light 50 and a tungsten core round. You might punch through, but you can't keep the trajectory.
A light 50.
Yeah, and a that's a rifle.
Sure.
It's a rifle.
Sure. But it's just glass, right? I mean, could it affect the trajectory? I mean, could it affect it that much, really?
From that distance? I don't know how much you know about this.
Well, nothing. You should assume.
I've done some reading.
Okay, well, it's not like you see in the movies. You can't just put your man in the crosshairs and let fly. Not at that distance, certainly. You have to calibrate your scope and the arc of the bullet. You have to know the weight of the bullet. You have to calculate wind direction and wind speed.
I see.
You have to calculate humidity.
Yes.
All these things affect trajectory. But a pane of glass?
I see.
It's possible. Don't get me wrong. But you would have to decide whether the risk is worth such a wild shot.
So Alan McCullough, Men of Tortuga, it was quite a show. It was very conducive to, in fact, the living room, the horse stable at the carriage house that these plays take place in. And I felt, I was on edge sitting there, the drama, the conflicts that were going on, and you felt you were almost part of the show. That's a big feature.
We've
right?
always worked on all of the things that we've done in Living Room Theater over the last now 5 years. One of the hallmarks of what we are after is to really get the audience in an intimate relationship to the play, to really make them feel that they are a part of it. And that came out of how we started, which was literally in our living room in our house in North Bennington, where we did the Seagull, Chekhov's Seagull. And Acts 3 and 4 were indoors as written, and they were in our living room, so we could only seat 22 people, and people were really in the play. And every year we've tried to continue that sense of bringing the audience very, very close to the production.
Very often we do site-specific work so that, especially in the Chekhov, as written, an act will take place outside, move to another location. For Vanya, we had 4 sets, and the audience moved from act to act, which they seem to love. But not all plays are conducive to that.
And the Men of Tortuga, which is the first sort of very modern play that we've done, is set in some sort of corporate world. You're not, maybe government, maybe corporate boardroom. And as it turned out, that barn, the carriage barn, worked rather beautifully for that setting. And with help from our son Angus, who's a very talented artist who created the set, you really felt like you were in somebody's paneled corporate boardroom. And it worked very, very, very nicely.
We should say that Men of Tortuga is written by Jason Wells. It was premiered at the Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago and then at the Oslo Rep in Florida. It's never been done in New York, but it's garnered fantastic reviews. It's a beautifully written play, philosophical, taking on corruption, assassination, the Athenians, the Puritans, and it's very funny.
So you sort of alluded to this a minute or two ago, Randall, but certain plays, certain shows are more conducive for small audiences and smaller settings than other plays, obviously, and the research to pick out and choose those type shows, right?
Right. We spend the winter reading plays at our home in Brooklyn. We gather actors together. Roger's been a part of those readings. And we are very careful in what we choose, both for the size of the cast, because we're still a small nonprofit theater, so we have to limit the number of actors. We do equity productions, so we are paying equity scale for out-of-town contracts. And then we try to gauge our audience and what our facilities are like. So, we have to tick off a number of boxes to choose our plays. But mostly we want to do masterworks, plays that are philosophically interesting, emotionally compelling, and give the audience pleasure.
Let me preface this a little bit by saying that it really is amazing what these two have been able to do with virtually no resources, help of their son, and it's really a three-person activity that, from picking the play to casting it to directing it to putting it on to having it building the set, doing everything,
and housing and feeding the
and
actors.
housing and feeding the actors.
Everybody
yes,
lives
on top
Everybody
of
lives
everything else.
in our house.
Yep.
When
Which is on the
We don't recommend
campus,
that you try
so
this
to
at home.
speak, of Park-McCullough.
It was a family house.
Yeah,
which
yeah.
we purchased many years ago.
So what I'm hearing is that, and I do want to mention the two shows coming up, and we'll talk a little further about them. Playing with Fire by August Strindberg and Overruled by George Bernard Shaw. This is August the 3rd to the 13th. But what I'm hearing is this is really fueled and driven by passion. Right?
Absolutely. No, I think there's a real heart to this. You can feel it. Last night before last at the closing party, you could really feel, I hate to put it this way, but you could feel the love in the room.
Yeah.
Where all of the actors, all really professional Broadway actors who had a lot of experience, were not, as you probably know, there's a difference between off-Broadway, and Broadway. And the sort of line between off-Broadway and Broadway is very slim. Really, it's the size of the theater. Anything under $4.99 is off-Broadway, and 500 and over is Broadway. But they're all professional actors, seasoned people who go from one to the other. Off-Broadway is, you have amateurs as well as professionals and so on. So we're considered, to all intents and purposes, for equity purposes, and we have to have an agreement with Actors Equity Association in New York. So to all intents and purposes, we're not an off-Broadway production house. So all of the actors, all of the people associated with the play have to be fully professional, equity associated people. We don't deal with the sort of amateur level. Given that parameter that we insist on, the quality of the productions, as you well saw when you came, is absolutely superb. I mean, the actors are really top-notch. Most of them, if not all of them, have actually been on Broadway in several shows, and it's the most spectacular thing out to consider something like that, to actually be bringing Broadway to southern Vermont, it's a real accomplishment, and on a shoestring, a real shoestring type budget. It's absolutely amazing what can be done if you really put your mind to it. And as Alan was saying, I think the key is, it used to be called Chekhov Camp, because as the actors would come up, they'd camp out in this gorgeous, bucolic setting of the Park-McCullough with the horses in the background and so on, and live for 2-3 weeks during the rehearsal and during the performance schedule in their house. They cook and do barbecues and provide everything from morning to night. So it's absolutely amazing what can be done, and they've become a closeness with the cast. So it's not a question of, I'm just coming to work for a couple of hours and then I go home. Here it is, 24 hours a day, everybody is together. And I think that adds a tremendous amount of cohesion completely to the cast, because everybody knows each other and they've been talking in the morning and they've shared a granola bar or a bowl of cereal or whatever it happens to be, and chatting over things. And even during the performance schedule, because of that closeness, you have the actors talking to each other and things evolve. Listen, when I say this, you react that way. And no, wait a sec, I think it's like that. Well, no, let's talk about that. And it changes. And if you noticed, even during, well, like all theater does, because it's live, changes from performance to performance. And I think that magical quality is something that none of the other theaters in the area can do, because of that closeness on a day-to-day basis of all of the actors and directors and producers and everybody else associated with it living together 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
So just to reinforce the point about equity, equity, of course, is considered the benchmark or the standard. And, you know, in terms of community theater or amateur talent that comes together, when you're talking equity, actors' equity, there's a whole different definition.
It's the Professional Actors Union, and there's also a Screen Actors Guild, which is the same thing, but if you want to work on screen, you have to be a member of the Screen Actors Guild.
And many of our actors also do
Yeah.
film and TV,
Yeah.
so they're members of multiple unions.
And to become a member of Actors Equity is not an easy thing. You have to. There are many steps by which you have to be able to join. You can work in certain qualified theaters that give you credits toward it, and you have to earn a certain number of credits. Or if you're a non-equity actor, if you're like somebody who lives here or somebody who lives in Brooklyn, you move to New York to become an actor, you want to join equity. If you're hired by an equity company, we could well, no, we couldn't because we're not paying enough, but if you're hired for a Broadway show, you can be hired as a non-equity actor, and then
you become equity.
And then you have to join the union and pay them a lot of money, and then you're a union member.
But I will say that we have used in the past non-equity actors who are brilliant.
Yeah.
So to say that, you know, all of our actors are very talented,
Yeah.
you know, whether they're
Professional
equity or non-equity, we
level.
try to, especially the younger actors, you know, they're going to get there. They're going to get their equity card, but we really are very interested in quality of talent,
Yeah.
most of all.
But this too is it sounds like a good stepping stone for someone who has aspirations in
Absolutely.
theater.
Absolutely.
This is a good place to get started and practice their craft. Right?
For those actors who are interested in process and who are interested in digging deep and who want to rub shoulders and do scenes with more seasoned actors, yes, indeed, it's a very good place.
And the people that the actors we have used who have been non-equity actors are highly trained. They're coming out of very good schools in New York, which is how we've gotten to know them. We have connections with certain training schools
With
in New York.
Juilliard and Circle in the Square. So we,
And they're on track to make this a career.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's a serious commitment.
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Roger Cooper, you have a background in New York theater. I know you're a longtime theater buff that actually has roots from when you were over in England, and I know you're active in the Players Club in New York City, and a patron, and also there's a theater group in New York that you're involved with, right? That you
That's correct, yeah. Yep.
are a producer of.
Yep. We actually, I got into theatre in England, and the first lead role that I had was back in 1964, I think it was, in a play called Men in Shadow, which nobody's ever heard of, but anyway, it was kind of fun. So I've been involved from the early 60s, at least, in theatre. My wife and I met in the theatre. I was in Dracula, and she was waiting to see going to direct the next show, and so came backstage and came to the cast party afterwards, and that's where we met. And that was nearly 50 years ago, but still. Anyway, so so theatre's been in my blood the whole way through. I did lighting for the theatre for several years, and lighting design and so on. So theatre's, and once it gets into your blood, it's in there.
And what is the group in New York City?
It's called Emerging Artist Theatre. For about the last, I guess, 15 years, I've been involved on the board as treasurer and helping with the whole production aspect of it. It started about 25 years ago by Paul Adams, who was the sort of founder of the thing and the creative person behind it. And we transitioned from an off-Broadway to a full off-Broadway house. We have our home, shall we say, at Broadway and 28th Street, in the same theatre where Tortuga, the children's theatre, exists. So they do the sort of children's theatre and activities, and with a sort of resident adult or regular theatre that's non-children. The big news there is that last year we had one show in the New York Fringe Festival, which, as you know, is a very prestigious thing, where they have maybe 2,000 or 3,000 applications. They select about 200 shows, and we have 5 shows going in this year. So it's kind of a busy time with that, and then at the same time doing movie work and so on. So
yeah, you were also involved with motion pictures too,
absolutely,
right?
Yes.
I think you have one in the can, so to speak. And
there's one called Price for Freedom that's
more in
just about finished.
Give us an update there.
Yeah, there's one called Price for Freedom that's just about finished at this point in time, and hopefully will be in a theatre or a television set near you very soon. And then there were 3 others that I've been working on that also are, one played at the Hoboken Film Festival this year, and the other 2 are sort of in process right now. So that's kind of fun too. So it's a little bit.
And Price for Freedom, as I recall, has a pretty distinguished cast.
Yes, Price
right?
for Freedom stars. It's about really the Shah of Iran and a family's plight during the fall of the Shah, who were very close friends, actually, the Shah's dentist. And it's based on a real book by a real person who's a friend of ours. And so it's really about how the Shah of Iran fell and the birth of terrorism, the Ayatollah Khomeini, the brutality of those initial years, and sort of like a Schindler's List, trying to extract people from Iran after the fall of the Shah. It's a very powerful film, and it's all got brand new music with all of the Persian music of the didus and sidars and so on. So it should be a very good movie, I think, and hopefully it'll do well.
Now, Roger Cooper, what I'm also hearing is that you're sort of, as the producer, whether it's the Living Room Theater at the Park-McCullough House or the Emerging Artist Theater or some of these motion pictures you're involved with, you seem to be on the business side, the financial side of these enterprises, and often that's a very challenged area for the arts.
Absolutely. I think too often one gets into a situation where the artists who actually make the magic, okay?
Their imagination runs away with them? Or?
They are absolutely brilliant in general terms at what they do. It is amazing. And then there's a business side to run it just as a regular business. So you've got to get income and expenses and accounts receivable and accounts payable and all of this advertising, etc. And quite often the two are sort of totally different skill sets. And I found this particularly in the emerging artist theatre, where the creative people try to do business and it doesn't really work too well. So what I'm hoping to try and bring both to Living Room Theatre as well as whatever else I do is a little bit more of the business side, having been in business all of my life in banking. So I sort of help out behind the scenes a little bit with that aspect. And I think it's a tribute to these two, this couple here, that they're willing to go along with some of the crazy ideas that I have.
And vice versa.
But I think one of the key things in any endeavor of this nature is that you have to have both sides of the thing. It has to be a business, and you have to have high quality creativity. And one should not really try and do the other. From a business point of view, I should not be part of the creative process other than giving my opinion for whatever it's worth. That has to be with the specialists, which are these two. And they do an absolutely fabulous job of it. So that's really the way I feel about it. And I think it's really become a really good partnership in this sense, where we can work together and openly discuss whatever it is and whatever's next. And I think the reality, for example, is that up to now we've been able to do just one show, but this year we're doing 2 shows, and hopefully in the future it'll be more, and really be part of the summer stock in this area.
Again, Playing with Fire and Overruled would be running from August the 3rd to the 13th, and Alan and Randall, and just to expand a little bit on Roger's point, I'm sure you guys over the years as seasoned theater veterans have seen many community theaters sort of fizzle out like comets, okay, because of some of the challenges Roger speaks to, right?
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, any artistic endeavor is difficult. I mean, to work with to make money or even cover your expenses is difficult, and
Which we were able to do
which we've
before
been
Roger came on.
Yeah, we've been able to do
be
that.
fair.
Absolutely.
But I would just like to say Roger also brings the love. It's not just that he's he's looking at the financials. He brings a tremendous passion and love for us and for the art, which is really what you need.
Yeah.
We're very, very lucky to have met him, found
absolutely,
him
and sort of out of nowhere, really, someone
Yeah.
introduced us to him, and it was
at a garden party,
we
and
were
that was
very,
it.
very
So,
lucky to
yeah.
come across.
But I think it's very true. I mean, the first 3 years, I had absolutely nothing to do with it, and they were showing a profit every year, which is a miracle. How that happened, I have no idea. But it's
Well,
just
certain of us weren't paid, so.
well, I mean, you're established now 5 years,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So there's something to
That-
be
yeah.
said for that, right?
But the other part of having someone who can look at the financial side, it's if you can take away from if you can take anything away or take away anything that we're doing, which is everything, it's enormously helpful. So
Yeah.
at a certain point this year in rehearsal, we had someone come in and cook during rehearsal week.
That was huge.
Which was enormous, because otherwise my poor wife here is doing or we're both doing all of that, and we're
Trying to
shopping and
direct, shop, and cook. You know, we need more help.
we need
we
there are
need
only
it.
so many hours in the day, and then you've got to build a set, and you got to put up the lights, and you got to figure out, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, wait a minute, we need to market. We don't have a marketing campaign. We have to go
Right.
find an audience quickly, because now we have this fabulous show, but we haven't had time to market it. I mean, all of these. So anything that Roger can do or anybody else will jump in and do is a huge help for us, because we are focused on the work. We're focused on the play. We're focused on how to make that thing, whatever it is, whether it's Men of Tortuga, which was an incredibly complicated play to learn and produce and stage, or Strindberg or Shaw or Chekhov, whatever it is, we're concentrated on making that thing as best as the best we possibly can.
And that involves not knowing what's right for a while. You know, the rehearsal process, it's not like I go in and I have all the answers. I do not.
Right.
I accept the gifts that actors give in rehearsal, and there are a lot of questions and problems that come up in rehearsal. And so that process is all consuming. And as Ellen says, suddenly it's like, uh-oh, we need to put an ad in the Bennington Banner, or we need a press person so we're learning what we need to do.
And I'd like to speak to this point about not knowing, because as an actor, I've worked in situations where you get to rehearsal the first day and the director says, okay, on this line you move from here to here and you stand there and you say it because you're angry and you're doing the thing, and then move there, and it's totally staged and totally set and totally scripted and
unexplored.
And it takes away from any kind of play. I don't care whether it's a stock comedy or whether it's a drama. When you work in that fashion, you take out the life. You remove the living part of theater because it's canned. And you see a lot of this. You see it in New York. You see it wherever you go. It's
and
easy to find.
especially in summer theater, you see it.
Because there's very little time, and so directors are worried, rightly, that I've got to get there day one and know exactly what I'm going to do because there's no time. But you go to those plays and as soon as they begin, you go, oh, here we are. I've seen this before, and it doesn't matter what the material is because
Right.
it's the same as every other sort of production that's mounted in that way happens. And as Randall says, we go in not knowing, we go in unsure, we go in looking, and our ability to live together and spend time together in the house and continue to grow the play through both rehearsal and the run, late at night, sitting around playing cards and drinking too much or having too much fun. That work is continuing, and it really adds to
we
what
do start with some ideas.
With some ideas.
But if you look at if you went to the first performance of Men of Tortuga and you went to the last performance, you could see a dramatic evolution. I mean, the first performance was brilliant, don't get me wrong, but you can see how each time you watch the play, it sort of evolves, and a new little thing here, instead of standing over there, they'll be sitting here, or instead of this line being said that way, it says that way. And that, I think, really brings the audience in, because it's a relatively small audience. As you were saying earlier, you've got a small audience in a relatively small area. You feel as if you're sitting there, like in this play, in the boardroom with these people, discussing all of these different issues.
Right.
And that's really what we're trying to do. Last year we did Ionesco Exit the King, and it was very much the same sort of thing. You felt that you were there in the king's court with the king talking to you personally, not up there on the stage and, all right, I'm sitting here and looking at it.
Right.
You felt that you're part of the action, and I think that's a critical part of what we do.
So our viewers have a personal invitation from Roger Cooper, the producer, Alan McCullough, one of the actors, and Randall and Zinn, the director. Personal invitation, right?
Absolutely.
To come to the
Absolutely.
Living Room Theater at the Park-McCullough House in North Bennington. And again, they have 2 more shows, 2 more plays coming up in August. And what's the website?
lrtvt.org.
lrtvt.org.
The initials of Living Room Theatre Vermont.
So,
And we should also say that those 2 plays, the Playing with Theater and Playing with Fire and Overruled, are 2 one-acts, Strindberg and Shaw, and they'll be in a single evening. We'll see both of them. One of them will be outdoors, and one of them will be in the barn at the
We are playing with theater.
We are playing with theater.
so you folks can see the enthusiasm that these people enjoy with this living room theater. And this is Danny Frank for GNAT TV.